All right, campers. Simon Clements here with Exact Soccer. Welcome back to the virtual development camp. Excited to have all of you here today for our conversation about another job description exercise. This one we're going to focus on midfielders. And, the goal of these job description exercises for me is kind of twofold. One is, giving players a better sense of the variety of traits that it takes to be successful at a given position. And then the secondary component is helping youth players identify players at the next level that they can watch and ultimately seek to emulate as they look to build the skill sets necessary to find success. With me today, excited to have Tim Marchesotto, head coach at Benedictine Mesa University in Mesa, Arizona. Tim, great to have you back. If you want to just take a second to introduce yourself, that'd be fantastic. And then let's get into talking about midfielders and just have a fun time talking about soccer.
Tim? No, that sounds great. Thank you, Simon. And always happy to be here working with Exact Soccer camps. So as Simon said, I'm Tim Marchesotto. I'm the head women's coach at Benedictine University in Mesa, Arizona. We're a 4-year NAIA school. We play in the CalPAC conference. And we're just excited, kind of getting ready for for what the fall is going to look like here, and certainly excited to speak with all of you, about midfield play. So I guess getting into it is that obviously there's different roles, depending on what formation that your team plays. But I think that there are obviously some basic traits that obviously that we look for within a midfielder in general. So midfielders generally will run obviously the most on the field, and need to be very much box to box players. So your fitness, your stamina. And you have to be good on both sides, from obviously defending and at the offensive level. But the game has changed a lot, and again, as different formations are preferred, there really are different roles that midfielders will play. So for instance, at Benedictine University, we play a 4-3-3. So our midfielders are really tasked with three things. Obviously, defending on both sides of the ball. When we lose the ball, our midfielders are surrounding, shifting, and always putting pressure on the ball from either side. Obviously, within a 4-3-3, we have our fullbacks are getting up the field. And they'll, sometimes have to provide cover for that, but they're also a conduit to get out, to break that line of pressure when you're building out of the back. So, we're trying to get the ball forward quickly. We're not playing direct, but we're trying to get the ball forward quickly. So our midfielders are that, like I said, that conduit, to it. So we're looking for our stats, if you will, are really coming a little bit more from our three, front runners, even in terms of assists. So our midfielders are very much tasked with starting the attack and being involved there, but it's primarily blocking the middle, not letting anybody come through us when we do lose the ball. And so they have to be very, very, very fit, very skilled, very good. But, our midfielders are probably not going to necessarily have, some of the offensive stats that maybe, others would. So.
Yeah. Can you just talk a little bit about that? I mean, in terms of formations at the college level, is there a predominant formation that you see, or that you would consider sort of a base formation that you see a lot right now in college soccer? Or is it, or are there just two or three standards, or, kind of how at the college level, when players are watching games, what, kind of getting at what should I be looking for in a formation? Sure. Because that's going to change the job description of the midfielder, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, I mean, I think, right now, I mean, obviously the 4-3-3, is popular. And I think it's, just as within the professional game, the more modern game, it's just kind of, gone that way. But it's really it's been played in the women's game for a very long time. Obviously a little bit of a different with the 3-4-3 in terms of North Carolina has played that forever. Anson Durrance, swears by it and would never do anything else, and says that every women's team should play that way. And I've debated it with them, but But yeah, no, and I think that you have some teams that still continue to stay in the traditional 4-4-2. I think the 4-2 the 4-2-3-1 seems to be another one. So those are probably the three that I tend to see the most when we go up against an opponent. So I'm not in favor of a 4-2-3-1. Just in terms of having two holding midfielders. So yeah, I mean, their role would be very different. They're really not going to get up and involved in the attack. They're going to be very holding, staying in. There's still going to be that that conduit when you're trying to break that first front line of pressure, of the forwards on your defenders when you are playing out of the back. So I think that's always within any formation, that's always going to be the case unless you're playing very very direct. Obviously depending on what your fullbacks are doing, how they're getting up the the field, and how high that you allow them to to play. And obviously in a in a 4-4-2, there's different ways to have your shape in the midfield. Is it side by side? Is it a diamond? And then in some teams, some coaches will allow, you won't have that specific role as being the holding and being the attacking. Sometimes the game will dictate what you do, and you can switch around with it, and that's a big, I think that's a big thing that, sometimes we can, pigeonhole, players into truly what they're supposed to, to do, rather than letting the game, dictate where they go. But you still have to have a game plan, and you still have to have a role. But I think in the 4-3-3, you're still going to have, the front runners are still going to, come back. I think you'll always keep, one high for, for us. And then certainly and this is another thing on set pieces, and set pieces have become so, so important. So, where are your starting points, both defensively and offensively, on those set pieces? You see now more so than ever within the professional game, especially in the men's game. I mean, you have defenders, that are taking, set pieces and going on goal, where I think in the traditional, your center mids used to always kind of be on the, on the ball, taking them.
So once the formation's established, obviously there's going to be two kind of separate roles within the midfield game, right? You're going to have your center mid, that's going to be more of the communication, and for many teams the connector, the individual that's centrally located to facilitate. And then on the outside you've got your wingers. Can you just talk a little bit about those two different roles, and what traits do those players have that sort of separates, when you're as a college coach watching and saying, this is somebody I want in the middle versus this is somebody I want on the outside?
Yeah. Well, let's look at, I mean, if we go back to the 2019, World Cup for the U.S. Women's National Team, right? And you look at a player like, Julie Ertz, who, maybe does not, I think she got obviously a lot of credit. She had a really great, World Cup, but she, a lot of defensive work. I mean, a lot of defensive work. Her work rate was tremendous, during it. And, whether it was, stopping the attack going forward, repressing and getting herself and other numbers around the ball. And then again, her starting the attack, where you'll have, a winger like, Megan Rapinoe, that again, in the national team, she plays much higher, but, in terms of maybe, comparing her to like an outside, mid, where she's getting up and down, she's looking in that space. So, from tactically, she'll kind of, stay over in that, in that side. And obviously the team's looking to go ahead and get switches and spring her forward into the space. Obviously Megan, even still has a lot of pace. So that's why, you're looking, someone like her is getting, assists, is putting the ball, in the box. Versus, Julie necessarily making some of those, long, even though she had a couple of good penetrating balls, that I remember during the tournament, usually, her first passes out are, are a connector, where then, as Megan Rapinoe is getting the ball and getting forward, again, she's looking to combine with the other forwards, or getting balls crossed in the, in the box. So, we're seeing the main differences again is what your role is, defensively, the types of passes, that you're connecting, from the center mid spot, to an outside mid or a winger, spot, depending on what formation you're making or playing, excuse me.
So then, yeah, if we were to break this down then into the four pillars and really start to think about, when I say that, I'm saying, physical, technical, tactical, and psychological. So within the midfield position, let's just start with physical. You highlighted a little bit of it to start the conversation, and you mentioned, basically I would sum it up as endurance is going to be critical. Box to box, you're always going to be moving. And so, obviously soccer endurance is always going to be important, but whenever you look at a graph of total number of miles run in a game, those midfielders inevitably are going to be at the very top of that chart, just as a function of their position. What other physical characteristics are you looking for from a midfielder?
Well, yeah, I mean, you have to be able. I mean, you're going to have a lot more contact in the midfield, right? So, you have to be strong, both upper and lower, lower body, and being able to take that pressure, use your body to shield, using your body to turn. So, that is very, important. And again, I'll take a Julie Ertz where, I mean, you look at her, I mean, she's just a strong, solid, player. And so when I'm looking at a player, say that I'm, recruiting for Benedictine. So yeah, I'm definitely looking for that, for that strength. I'm looking for, good size. I mean, there's still going to be, balls that need to be won in the air. So again, that jumping ability, I mean, being able to be on both sides, in the aerial game. I think one of the things that we're, that I've certainly seen at a trend is that, you look at the goals, even just, all the players that are here listening today is think about, the team that you play on, whether it's high school, club, whatever it is right now. Think about where the goals are coming from. Goals are coming from, much closer, to the goal now. If you really look at anybody, playing, I think playing up top, everybody's conversion rates are pretty much probably going to be, the same when they're in true goal scoring opportunities. So it's are you minimizing maybe some of the longer term and sometimes in the, in the women's game, we see, shots a lot being taken from long range because there's some time and space, but they don't have, the power or, they're just not high percentage, shots. So again, I think from there, the role of a midfielder that I'm looking for is that I'm not looking for somebody that can shoot long range. I'm looking for somebody that again can connect the passes. Looking for that high percentage rate of being able to connect the passes. So they still have to be strong. They still have to be physical. They still have to have the the endurance. But I'm really looking, maybe, kind of segueing into the next pillar is maybe, the technical, side of things is that ability to do that. And here's the thing, everybody that's watching, and being involved in this today, like nobody has to do stats for you. Nobody, you don't have to have some, fancy equipment, or metric system. You can keep track. I mean, what your really what your completion rate was in a game, and are you giving away that ball? Because if we're giving away the ball too much, then we're defending much more, then we're having to work harder to win the ball back, and then that obviously stymies the the offense going forward. So again, we have to be really good passers. We have to be technical with the ball. We have to be able to, keep off the, the pressure, and being able to have good dribblers. What's our first step? So, maybe again, even getting back to the physical side again, what's our speed and agility, look like? What's our balance, look like? And, during these times, hopefully you've all gotten back to doing more individual training, whether your coaches have tasked for it. I know some of you in certain parts of the country are maybe up, back and running and playing. Some of us aren't in other parts of the country. But I think one of the things that we've seen through this whole time is how important individual training is. And that plays into the things that we're talking about. It plays into the pillars. We don't need to be in a team training to be working on our strength and conditioning, our speed and agility, even our passing, our touches, our technical, stuff, because we can find a wall, we can find a solid surface, to do these things. So this time we actually should be even getting better, in this, because I think we're into so much our team training that we forget, what we need to do individually.
How, just do you have any recommendations for, I think you alluded to a lot of stuff there, but, in terms of specifics, when you're thinking about things that midfielders should look for, maybe keywords that they might type in to get some good work online that would lead to some exercises that would help them build the techniques you're talking about?
Yeah, I think that, one of the things you can type into, YouTube, and there's just, right now there's just tons of content, on there right now, if you're not getting stuff, specifically from your coaches. But, certainly looking at, individual, soccer skill training, and then that's going to pull up stuff. One of the good, places on YouTube that I like, it's called 7Mic, so 7MIC. And, he does a really good job, has lots of really good individual drills. So again, where, you'll be able to just do it, work on by yourself. If you do have some teammates, some friends to do these things, you can. But again, finding a solid, surface, being able to, vary the range of passing that you're working on. And then when you're hitting a ball against a solid surface, it's just like a pass coming back to you. So working on our first touch. I mean, obviously in the midfield, it's a game of, everywhere on the soccer field, it's a game of angles. But again, when you're working with the outside of your foot inside, the different surfaces, turning, regardless of whether you have a defender there or not, it's all very important, work to do, because, for us, we're trying to change our point of attack, right? So we're trying to get forward. We're trying to change that point of attack. Obviously, we've got, 3 front runners. So whether it's a penetrating ball through or, looking to get that switch into the flank space. So I think it's important. Another thing too, like you want to work on hitting your long balls, but you don't have a partner to do it with. Maybe you only have, 2, 3, 4, soccer balls, is again, going from one side of the field, if there's a goal up, working on hitting it, over that goal, just like you would as a midfielder, get the ball turning, and switch and play. So, you can recreate these situations, even if you don't have a ton of balls or people to do things, with. But again, you have to recreate these situations that are relative to what you're playing. So if you're on here and you're, an incoming, college, freshman, great. If you're on here and you're still a 2020, looking, what does that team play? What is your club? What does your high school team, play? And I think there's plenty of opportunities, to know what your role is as a midfielder and what you need to do, and to be able to recreate that stuff when you go, at a field or an open space to do it.
Well, so that, brings us to our third pillar, which would be the tactical, in terms of, again, you've been hitting on a lot of this stuff. I know there's crossover, it's like when you talk about technical, inevitably, right? Everything is sort of moving towards tactical execution at the end of the day. So, when you're talking tactics with your women in Benedictine Mesa, like what are the things that you highlight specific to the midfielders that are necessary for them to be successful in terms of the tactical component?
Yeah, and it's reading the game and connecting your passes. I mean, we want to have a really, really high, passing completion rate, from our midfielders. I mean, that is just so important. And if we're not getting that, then we're not going to be, successful in what we're trying to, do. So that's really probably the main thing from an offensive standpoint. from a defensive standpoint, again, is recognizing the play. How do we shift? How do we work? How do we work together? We're very much trying to, trap teams into, giving them something to, hopefully they play into it. And then we have our shifts and our movement to try to, trap those teams. So, that's something from tactically from a defensive standpoint that we're looking at. We're trying to dictate how we want the other team, to try to, attack against us, because we're trying to play them into an area that we want. We know what we're going to do when we get them in that, in that area. So certainly, trying to get them to switch, trapping them into the, into the sideline, obviously having the middle, the middle clogged up. So if they do try to play through there, we feel that we're going to win the ball and get counterattacks, in a very advanced forward position.
Yeah. So in terms of how to work on tactics, I mean, right now I've noticed that in Europe, the games are back up, right? I mean, obviously, some of the leagues are, the Bundesliga, Premiership, at least on the men's side. Do your women watch, like, how much soccer do your women watch? And what do you recommend a high school player? Because part of the game, right, is this, it's the puzzle. The more times you see the puzzle, the better you are at unlocking the key to it, right? It sort of starts to make sense. So in terms of that, at the college level, I imagine you probably personally watch a tremendous amount of film, partly with the goal of being able to, like, pick out the pieces that your various position groups need to watch in order to be ready for the next game.
Yeah,
right?
no, absolutely. So, I mean, obviously, with the system that we play, and Liverpool is certainly, a great example. And one of the things with Liverpool too is that, you look at, the players that they have in Fabinho, who's a Brazilian, Gini Wijnaldum, who's a Dutch player, Jordan Henderson, who's an English player. You also have James Milner, Zerdan Shaqiri. So you've got these players in Naby Keita. So that's kind of your kind of middle. They've got 6 guys, and during the course of the year, I mean, they've used 18 different combinations. So it's not all the players fit very much, into the system. Obviously there's a combination of Henderson, Fabinho, and Wijnaldum are ultimately the preferred, 3. So being able to watch them play, to have our players watch what they're doing, their movement is really, really important. And you see, again, they are not the goal scorers. It's very much the front 3 that really do the bulk, of the scoring, with the exception of, set pieces where Trent Alexander-Arnold with his free kicks, and obviously, Virgil van Dijk is up there. So I just think that's a great model, for that. One of the things is that, and we've done it at we did it at the exact camps last summer, is watching the women's national team play. And one of the things that, you saw some tactical, changes, some personnel changes through the tournament. So, you all have the ability to go back and watch, those videos from the World Cup, to see what the U.S. national team, was doing. And right now too, I mean, our professional women's league is up and running, as well. And so those games are televised and on. So I think for all of you, ladies out there, I think that you have 2 great options with, again, going back and watching, the World Cup games. I think staying in tuned and watching, especially, watch these games live, and then you go back and then you watch the game again after, see what you missed, It's not just watching a game once. We as coaches, I mean, we're analyzing tape. I mean, obviously, I like to watch, film like right after the game while it's still fresh in my mind. And then I'll go back and I'll look at it, again, and then, you meet with your staff and you talk about it. So, it's not just one time, even though you may have a very clear, picture in your mind of what you just, saw, you still want to watch it back. So I think all of you ladies have the opportunity, to do that. And there's nothing the matter with watching a men's game, either, and seeing what a team that plays your formation, does, because the roles are still the same.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think, particularly during this time, challenging yourself to watch as much soccer as possible is one of the best things you can do. And if you're really going to learn the game and get a better understanding of the tactics necessary to be successful within the game, it's just gonna give you a great education in how to play your position, which is ultimately the goal. Now, you've highlighted Julie Ertz a few times, a few of the women's national team players. Are there any other either women's professional league players maybe from other countries you recommend players seeking out in the midfield, or in the men's game? Are there a few players or teams that they might seek out so that they can maybe have a little bit more of a guided search?
Yeah, I think that there's a couple players from the U.S. men's national team. I mean, I'd certainly look at at Rose Lavelle, and I mean, she had just a complete, just bursting on the on the scene for this for this World Cup, and look at her play, which is obviously very offensive offensive minded, even from the another great offensive midfielder, and I'm going to give this as a guy example, but Kevin De Bruyne from Manchester City. He's probably one of the the exceptions of somebody that actually has very high stats as a midfielder, not just with assists but with with goals. So that's somebody to watch. Sam Mewis, I think her role was reduced a little bit during the World Cup just because of Rose's kind of emergence. But these are all great players. These are all players that you should watch. And remember, you take those names and you plug them in. You can watch highlight videos of them. You can watch games that they're playing in. So certainly those three players, I would definitely look at video of all three of those players. So Sam Mewis, Rose Lavelle, and Julie Ertz, I think, are just three great examples for for us.
Absolutely. No, that's really helpful. And I think, again, what I'd like the players to take away from this, particularly specific to you midfielders out there, it's just building an understanding of your position. And, Tim's done a great job articulating some of these core traits that are necessary for success. But ultimately, this is about turning the camera back on yourself and doing a bit of self-study. So I always recommend to players, I just realized I don't think I've been on camera this whole time, Tim.
I've seen
you. You've seen me, but I don't think they've seen me.
Oh.
So what I wanted to let you guys know is, if you think about it as a grid where you have technical, tactical, psychological, and physical, okay? And those are sort of the traits. Identify a player, so let's say if we're going to break down Julie Ertz. Look in each one of those areas of her ability and try to pick out one or two things that you think that she is really just top-notch at. And it gives you, when you look at the four different components, an idea of, you can start to ask questions. Is this person a great communicator? Tim brought up earlier, Julie Ertz is more of a defensive-minded midfielder. Now, obviously, she has a job to go forward, and she plays both ways. But why is it that she's so, successful in the U.S. system as more of a defensive a player in certain situations? Similarly, why does somebody else in the midfield go forward more or have more scoring opportunities? What about their game allows them to do that? Every team's making decisions and trying to put their players in a position to succeed with the skill sets that they have. And a lot of times it's that the two, you brought up Rose and Julie, right? So those two players are tremendous complements within the U.S. system, is I think ultimately what we learned when we watched the last World Cup, right? It's sort of like both of those players are able to excel even though their core traits are very different. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And even, and I forgot to mention even like Lindsey Horan is another one to, to look at. I think, and what you saw is, again, what Jill did, with the lineup and the player changes was, made a lot of adjustments and changed. And so each player had, each of the four, ladies that I've mentioned, all have, different traits. Now, some are similar. But so they're all able, to fit in their, in their roles during the course of the, of the tournament, and we're successful. Like I said, people were kind of scratching their heads, during the, when it was actually, happening, but obviously it worked out, really well. And I think it bodes well. I mean, I know, for what I have returning and what I've recruited, I mean, I've got a very deep, midfield, and I see, a good rotation. I see, my players having the, these girls having the ability to get time. I think naturally that, there's going to be a preferred, three, if you will, but they all have some different, dynamics. So I'm really looking forward, again, to the season just being able to start and seeing what our girls can do, because our midfield is going to look very different. We've got a lot of new, players. We graduated a lot of seniors. So, this is a combination of for us, of freshmen and junior college transfer players. So we're going to have to work a lot on, who exactly are the combinations. I know they all have the ability, but how are they all going to fit, together?
Mm-hmm. No, and that's obviously that's the joy and pain of being a coach, right? Is trying to solve that problem. Well, Tim, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today. Do you have any closing thoughts for the midfielders out there, before we let them go, or, are there any other topics you wanted to cover before we say goodbye?
Yeah, no, just, make sure that you understand, what your role, is. And I do find sometimes players can be confused. And, when you excel within maybe one formation, and when the coach changes it, you don't. Obviously, we always have to be open, to change. And, what you play now in high school, or the role that you play in the midfield in high school and club, may certainly be different, in college. So I think just having this conversation, being involved in it, and opening your minds a little bit more to studying the game a little bit more. And I think Simon said it great, that you need to watch, you need to study. And all of you, I can't stress enough, is that hopefully when the college season starts and when people are allowed to go watch games, go watch your college, whatever local college you have, watch their games, in person. Certainly, like, our games at Benedictine are streamed, so anybody can watch it at any time. And that's really, for most colleges. So, make sure that, you're studying the game that you're going to be going, into, which is the, the college level. So, I just think that was such a strong point from Simon. Just can't stress enough, your preparation, your watching, and how do you take what you're watching and incorporate that into your own game.
Well, and not just into your own game. It's your recruiting pitch.
Yep.
Right? At the end of the day, if you're going to be writing to Tim at Benedictine Mesa, one of the best things you can do is say, watch your game against so-and-so on Friday. I'm a midfielder. I play center mid, and I have a lot of traits that line up with what you're asking your center mid to do, and you maybe highlight three things. Any player who's doing those sorts of little things, that email is just going to jump out to a coach. It's probably going to get read. For sure it's going to get read. The video link's going to get clicked on. And you're setting yourself up for the next time Tim has an opportunity to see you, or is going to a tournament and looking for the fields he wants to attend. It just becomes like, oh, that's somebody who really took the time. She watched our team play. She knows the game. She's trying to make a soccer connection. I feel like that player's got a very good likelihood of getting a coach like yourself to the field. And that's your goal. To all you players out there, once the coach has made it to your field and has a chance to assess your ability, the recruiting process is going to go one of two ways at that point. Either, hey, I watched some of your game, just don't see you as a fit, or hey, there's some things you're doing out there that really interest me, or maybe I'm really excited and that's where you're going to get feedback. And they're going to convey that to you, and they're going to write an email that's going to let you know what the next steps are, which is what you're going for. So I think even within this job description, it's sort of like, this is just ammunition to go forward and speak to coaches with at the end of the day, which I think is a skill more players should have, because if you want to win the marketing game, college coaches love to talk about soccer. And players that are able to do that well are going to stand out. I promise you that. With that, Tim, I really appreciate you getting on this call with me today. I know you're traveling, it looks like, so you got a hotel room there, but good luck with you said you're down in Tucson?
Yeah, I'm in Tucson, Arizona. Yep, recruiting and working with players down here. So
that's awesome, man. So good luck with that. And, to all you players out there, thanks again for tuning in. I really appreciate it. And we'll see you next time at the Virtual Development Camp. Take care, all.
All right. Bye.